Welcome to Alpha Kappa Psi's webinar titled Building an Effective Retention Plan. This webinar is part of the Chapter Operations Series. My name is Mackenzie Lauka, and I serve AK Psi as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be your webcast producer. Before we dive into the content, I would like to review the web-based features available to you. This webinar will be advanced remotely, but at the bottom of your screen, there are multiple application widgets you can use throughout the program. I encourage you to utilize the widgets to download additional resources, connect with other attendees during the presentation, and share highlights via social media. A copy of the slide deck and other additional materials are available in the resource list widget that looks like a green folder. The group chat is available for you to interact with other attendees and the presenters during the presentation. When posting, it will share your first name and last initial, but be sure to also mention your chapter or university. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It is a question mark icon and covers most common technical issues. Additionally, each of the windows on your screen are able to be resized, moved, and adjusted to fit your individual learning need. At the end of the program, I'll explain how you can ask a question to any of our panelists. If you have a question throughout the program, however, you can launch the Q&A widget to submit your question. Your questions will be asked at the end of the program in the order they're received. Be sure to also check out our social media content. Portions of today's program will be tweeted using the hashtag AKPsiChat. You can follow along using the Twitter widget in the menu dock at the bottom of the screen, as well as post highlights to your own Twitter feeds using the hashtag. You may also find some valuable resources on the AK Psi blog, Facebook page, Instagram feed, LinkedIn page, Twitter feed, and our YouTube channel, all of which can be accessed from the akpsi.org homepage. Retention is the capacity to sustain an organization, which starts with bringing in the right new members. Have you been using the right sales tactics to recruit members and retain them? During this webinar, we will provide some ideas on retaining new members, as well as thinking of a program that engages all members and focuses on building brotherhood and the relationships in the chapter. In addition to covering these topics, we'll leave time for your questions and comments on the subject matter. We have 3 presenters who have given their time today to provide suggestions and ideas and to provoke thoughts and questions so you walk away from today's program with new insight on the topic. At this point, I'd like to introduce our presenters. Alec Moran was initiated in fall 2013 at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, where she graduated in May 2016 with a degree in urban studies and minors in environmental studies and political science. During her time with the Psi Epsilon chapter, Alec served as Vice President of Professionalism for 2 terms. She joined the Heritage Center staff in mid-June as the Area 1 Chapter Educational Resource Coordinator. Outside of assisting chapters, Alec enjoys traveling, finding unique food venues, and spending time in nature. Basha was born in Newark, New Jersey, and raised in the small town of Covington, Tennessee, on the west side of the state. She attended the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where she pledged the Zeta Lambda chapter in fall of 2014. As a collegiate brother, she was a marketing director for 2 semesters and served as a BIG for 3 semesters. In May 2016, she graduated with a degree in advertising and a minor in business. She enjoys cooking foods of different cultures, creating 2D artwork, and reading. Courtney was initiated into the Beta Iota chapter at the State University of New York at Buffalo in 2012. During her time as a student member, she served as a Brotherhood Chair, Ambassador, and Vice President of Administration. She also served as her chapter's delegate to UB's Professional Interfraternal Council. Courtney has been very active in her role as a volunteer, taking on positions of chapter advisor, colony advisor, section director, regional manager of the ACR, and more. In 2014, she graduated with her BA in physical anthropology. In her free time, she can be found around her hometown of Buffalo, hosting various events and taking in all the city has to offer. Courtney?
Thanks, Mackenzie. Recruitment and retention go hand in hand and are often talked about together. Why is that? In order to sustain an organization, to ensure it continues for years to come, you have to continue to bring in new members to replace those who graduate. Retention relies on recruitment, and recruitment leads to retention. This is why it's important to understand the importance of both pieces, but to also realize you can't have one without the other. Recruitment is an exciting and important time for chapters. While it should be fun and the chapter should be eager to bring in new members, it is also an extremely serious time. This is your opportunity to recruit potential new brothers who will carry on your legacy in the fraternity. The people you recruit today are the brothers of tomorrow. They are the ones who will be leading the chapter after you have graduated and continuing on your chapter's traditions and carrying out your chapter's goals. With these new members, your chapter will not be able to advance. If you stopped bringing in new members, your chapter would eventually no longer exist. Now, you don't want to accept just bringing in anyone into pledging, and you should find the right individuals for your chapter. In order to get to the point of asking individuals to join, it takes a great deal of planning to ensure you get the intended outcome. This is a lot of work that goes into the process before, during, and after recruitment. But if you do it and you do it well, it will be worth it. It's a responsibility of the entire chapter to participate and sell the fraternity, to bring in the best of the best and continue to grow your chapter. It's also important to remember that recruitment is not just an event or a series of events, and it is more than a week or two at the beginning of the academic term, but rather recruitment occurs every day. The chapter is continuously recruiting in their classes, at events, on campus, in the dining hall, and everywhere members are present, through your actions and your behaviors. You represent the fraternity and are always portraying an image of membership.
Crafting an effective membership retention plan takes a lot of steps and isn't something that can happen overnight. It will take the work of the entire chapter and require dedicated leadership to the work toward making this happen. It starts from the very beginning, even before recruitment begins, and continues throughout membership to understand your members, leading them and keeping them involved. Throughout the webinar, we will walk through each step to step, but give you a brief overview of what it will require of you to do. Conducting goal setting and planning, having successful recruitment, understanding your new members, effective training of these new members, leadership with mentors, upholding the standards of Alpha Kappa Psi, and keeping members involved. Creating an effective retention plan is an ongoing process to check in with your members, revise your strategy, fit with what works best for your chapter at the present time. It is extremely important to do. However, because without members, your chapter won't exist. So, you need to take the time to ensure that your members are getting out of the chapter what they want and ensure that there are opportunities for them to grow and that will keep them involved and keep new members wanting to join.
Before you can even begin to think about who you are and what you want to recruit, where to look, and how to start, it is important that you and everyone in your chapter understands who we are as an organization. It is very important that you consider this as we are going through the presentation and as your chapters embark on recruitment. If you don't know who we are and what we stand for, how can you sell the fraternity to new members? Alpha Kappa Psi is a values-based professional organization. Who we are stems back to our core values: brotherhood, knowledge, integrity, service, and unity. These are all the values that our members aim to uphold, and they are values that we want our potential members to aspire to as well. Now, I want you to ask yourself, what makes your organization different from Accounting Club, American Marketing Association, the Financial Management Association? Share in the group chat what you think separates your chapters from other organizations on campus. Some things that might make you stand apart from other organizations on campus are the unity that you have in your chapter or the professionalism. So just keep those things in mind as you're going forward in your recruitment. It is important to consider these things and ensure everyone knows your differentiating points. Knowing who you are as a chapter and who we are as a fraternity will help you feel more confident as you are talking to potential new members and explaining our purpose and why they should join your chapter. A side note to that, It is important to consider, are our members living the values and upholding the standards of Alpha Kappa Psi? Are we being who we say we are, not just in class, but throughout campus? This, in fact, is what our prospective members see. What am I to think if I see Amy, the president, yelling at another member outside of the business building? Or if I hear stories about members puking after a party or not attending class because it just wasn't worth it? It is one thing to say this is who your chapter is, but if you act differently, nobody is going to believe you or take you seriously. Consider the image you want for your chapter and the image of the fraternity each member represents. As mentioned earlier in the webinar, this isn't just for a 2 or 3 week period either. Your image is created over time, and people remember what they see.
Now, once you know who you are going to be better able to sell your chapter by focusing on where you excel and what separates you from other organizations on campus. Why should a potential member join your organization as opposed to another? In order to properly sell the right picture of your chapter, everyone in the chapter needs to be prepared with the right information. Are you properly training all of your members for recruitment? If not properly trained, most of our members are likely not selling the product that we want them to be selling. Training must happen. This happens through recruitment clinics. Prepare membership to know and understand the information they need to be able to tell prospective new members. Things they need to know: pledge and member fees, pledge and member attendance policies, requirements of membership, important dates, time commitment, benefits of joining, and opportunities available to them. Are you selling the work as much as the fun? When we are recruiting, it is easy for us to resort to tactics that we think will draw our peers into the group. Those tactics are not normally focused on work, but on the good times. Do you focus on the brotherhood and not put any emphasis on holding events and doing community service? Are you putting any time into sharing volunteer opportunities with the organization after graduation? Remember, we are trying to recruit members for life, not just for a few years. Are you providing all the necessary information prior to extending an invitation to join? Does the prospective new member know everything that he or she needs to know? While you may not realize it, this may be the most important part of recruitment. Just like in sales, it's not necessarily about the transaction as much as it is about establishing a relationship. We don't want members being shocked or surprised by the expectations. This is especially important for retention, because if you continuously draw in new members without explaining the right pieces of information, you will continue to lose new members shortly after they realize what they thought they were getting into isn't the case. Are you answering any remaining questions before extending an invitation to join? What questions do people have? We assume that because they agree to join that all of their questions have been answered. Don't allow someone to accept an invitation without having all of his or her questions answered.
Even if you know the right information and are prepared to share it, it won't be much of a difference if the right people aren't coming out to your recruitment events, and if you're targeting the wrong individuals. So who are the people you're recruiting? Many chapters typically target freshmen, recent high school graduates, in search of new friends, in search of a direction, who both socially and professionally, who it's their first time away from home, trying to navigate those academic challenges, and also are new to the concept of time management in a university level. Utilize table events and speaking in freshman business class in order to reach these students. First-year college students are highly impressionable. They want to make friends, establish a social life, and get involved on campus. It is very important for us to understand that we welcome them into our organization. But realize for your chapter, freshmen may not be your ideal recruit. Depending on your chapter's goals, its current size, and a lot of other factors and items that you need to consider may differ from this initial. But there are several key areas that have to be identified as important to consider when you're targeting an audience. First, student classification. What year in school are they? Are there any non-traditional students? Your age of your student body, academic intent, employment status, other commitments on campus and off, academic course load. There is no such thing as a perfect student when it comes to recruiting. Rarely will anybody fit each part of your mold that you are looking for. And remember, anyone that is both interested and understands the requirements should be given an opportunity. However, in most cases, chapters are going to want to target students in Tier 1, which is your freshman and sophomore students who have gone straight into college after high school and are business students with fewer outside commitments and a less rigorous course load. The reason being is that these students have the most time to dedicate to the organization and are still looking to find their place on campus. Once students start getting into their upper level courses, they will need more time to dedicate to their classwork, internships, and have likely joined other organizations that they want to dedicate their time to. These students will have more time in the chapter and will be more likely to step up into leadership opportunities while they don't have these commitments. Now students today are able to juggle more commitments in leadership positions than students have in the past. So it is not up to the chapter to determine somebody's ability or time commitment. Again, I will repeat, any student that understands the requirement and has the interest in joining should be given a chance in the organization.
Once you accept your new members, a lot of emphasis is placed on uniting the pledge class, getting them through the process as a team or a group. You want a high retention rate, but more so, you want a higher retention rate when it comes to the chapter. The focus should not be on building a strong pledge class, but building a strong chapter. This doesn't mean they aren't connected. If your chapter is strong, it's likely your pledge classes are going to be strong as well. So start it early with what you are teaching in the pledge education program and how they are integrated into the chapter. We want to integrate our new members into the larger group, but we oftentimes do the exact opposite. We separate them during the pledge process and then make them learn on their own, and then throw them in only when they have the opportunity to make decisions. Is that doing us any good? In order to be a good member, shouldn't we learn what it means to be a good member before we actually become members? Do they understand the requirements of membership? Have they ever seen a chapter meeting? Have they participated in a committee meeting? While you may not want your members attending an actual chapter meeting, would it be a benefit to them to attend a mock chapter meeting? No one is going to be able to set the example better than you are. Should we involve our new members in committees? Do committee heads work with pledge class committees? Do they help to plan upcoming events? Consider areas of crossover between your chapter and the pledge process to start acclimating them to being a better member earlier. While you certainly cannot give away any fraternal secrets, the goal is for everyone to make it through the pledge process, right? So why not hedge your bet and start preparing them earlier when they do go through initiation? Then they are ready to hit the ground running instead of needing to start over.
In order to best prepare your pledge class for membership and integrate them into the chapter, it starts with having a positive leadership that understands the benefits. What is positive leadership? Focus on the individual, consider their needs, include them, and their abilities. How can you exhibit positive leadership? Providing each student with a big brother. Oftentimes, we assign big brothers based on who likes who. It is probably more important that we assign the responsibilities based on who is willing and able to commit the necessary time to ensuring that their little brother achieves both in college and as a member. Big brothers need to understand the commitment they are taking on and adhere to the responsibility. It is more than just requirements to be filled, but a relationship being formed that will help both individuals on their path to success. According to Dr. Nancy K. Slosberg, students interacting with the peers is a requirement that must occur in order to make their participation in campus activities and student organizations meaningful. This only emphasizes the importance of being involved and making these relationships with their peers in order to become engaged and stay involved. Encouraging alumni involvement to lead professional groups. Alumni involvement may be the most integral aspect of leadership. Very few 21 or 22-year-old students are going to help me establish the networks I am seeking for after college. Alumni, on the other hand, can. We must begin providing our members with some of the opportunities that we promise them when we are recruiting them. It is important for alumni to understand their value, no matter what their job or responsibilities are in their current place of employment. Establishing families or small groups within the chapter to interact regularly. This is important for larger groups where it is easy for individuals to get lost within all of the interaction. Smaller groups help create a sense of belonging within a group without the challenge of trying to rally 100+ students on a regular basis for some type of gathering or event. Study groups emphasizes the importance of academics and encourages working together to better understand the material. The benefit of having chapter brothers is each member has different strengths and different methods of learning. If you don't understand something in the chapter, it's likely there is someone else in the chapter who does. Attend professional programs. They likely joined Alpha Kappa Psi as opposed to a different organization because of the professional development opportunities we offer. Capitalize on that and ensure you are both creating and advertising the right opportunities that targets everyone's majors and potential career paths. Not everyone is going to be an accountant and wants to hear from a CPA, but some will. Others will want to hear from marketing professionals, financial analysts, supply chain managers, etc. Knowing your members will help you select the right professional development. Give everyone a role. When everyone has a specific task they are responsible for, they are more likely to stay involved as they don't want to let others down. There are certainly not enough leadership positions for everyone, but even giving people specific tasks and responsibilities as part of the committee makes them feel included in the group and that they have something to offer. Each of these areas targets a different need or want of a member, and by keeping the chapter members' needs and wants in mind, you can focus on what will keep them involved and what will propel them further. As long as their needs and wants are being met, they have no reason to leave and are more likely to stay actively involved and give back if they're getting what they want out of the organization.
Now, when these new members transition into membership, it is important that they see all the positive leadership continue. If there is a disconnect between pledging and membership, where there are standards and leadership fall to the side, what is going to keep the new members from quitting? So you don't want to have disconnect between going from pledging and all of the requirements there into membership. We want to ensure that the level of commitment between pledging and membership doesn't fall by the wayside, and that both pledges and chapter members understand the benefits and expectations. Some examples of standards for success are a student's GPA, community service hours, other campus involvement, and high school involvement if they haven't quite been on campus long enough. So, a question to the group. What other standards for success does your chapter hold members to? Feel free to use the Q&A box that's available. Sorry, the group chat box that's available at the bottom of your screen. Sometimes chapters will have a required number of professional events that their members have to go to. Many chapters also have a required number of service events or service hours that their members have to do. All good things when giving back to the community. Many members also have a requirement for being on a committee or being a chair. So does anybody have any other examples that their chapter does? Well, let's move on, guys. We can share a little bit more as we go through. As principal business leaders, we need to hold ourselves and our brothers to higher standards. As we mentioned earlier, you will need to make sure that you are picking potential new members who will be able to meet these standards, as opposed to new members that we like. It is easy to get caught up in who we like and leave out the standards and expectations of a member. They will need to be aware ahead of time so it isn't a shock when they get there. As leaders of the chapter, you also need to have specific standards of success for you as an officer. These may include, are we meeting the needs of our members? Are we being considerate of our members' time? Are we accomplishing our members' chapter's goals and individual agendas? Are we getting everybody involved? All of these are questions that you should be asking yourself and maybe even asking other members in your chapter to get some outside opinions. These are all factors that play a part in being an officer and feed into the chapter member success standards. If chapter officers aren't on board, then the rest of the chapter is likely to follow suit.
Before we start to wrap up, I have a quote I want to share with you. Students feel marginalized when they believe they do not fit in, which leads to negative outcomes such as self-consciousness, irritability, and depression. I would like you to consider this as you are recruiting potential pledges, sitting in chapter meetings, and working with your committees. Aside from the professional development and opportunities that we've talked about thus far, it is important to remember Alpha Kappa Psi is also a brotherhood, and we should also be focusing on the social well-being of our members as a whole. Are our brothers happy? Are they fulfilled? And are we being good brothers? Consider that quote as you work toward developing your retention plan, and remember to infuse brotherhood throughout everything to develop an inclusive chapter where all members feel welcome and a part of the brotherhood. Now to recap what we've learned and add in some final thoughts. Retention and recruitment go hand in hand. You have to focus on one to focus on the other. Every member should have a responsibility. We lose good employees if they feel like they should be doing more or could be doing more. We lose good members in the same circumstance. Regardless of how you feel, make sure your members have something to do. They should feel like they belong and are needed. Make sure that each member's time is respected. This organization means different things to different people. The required attendance for every event may be sufficient for people who are part of a certain niche, but it may be detrimental to the membership of others. Consider what is important for the organization, not for your ability to socially interact with others. When you do have necessary events, including meetings, make sure that they are efficient. We often like to use meeting time to become social. While meetings should be enjoyable, members should consider an optional gathering after the meeting to catch up. Everyone should be held accountable. When standards and expectations evaporate, so does the dedication and commitment of our members. Are we recognizing the work of our members? We may not remember names, dates, or what we did, but we always remember how we felt. Acknowledge your members for their work and their accomplishments.
All right, thank you guys. So certainly a lot of great information, and that does wrap up the content portion of the program. Before we head into the questions, I do want to note that portions of today's program were pulled from student development and college publications. The complete citation is listed here on the screen for you. So now it's time to hear from all of you guys listening in from around the world. As stated earlier, you can launch the Q&A widget from the menu dock to submit your questions. This feature will remain open even in on-demand viewing, and if we do not get to your question, we will respond via email. At this time, we're going to go ahead and start with the first question we have here, and that is, what advice do you have for reaching out to former brothers for honest feedback about why they left? I want them to feel safe and valued even though they resigned.
Hi, this is Alec. This is a great question. I think all chapters should input this into their processes when you do have members who resign or choose to leave the chapter for any reason. So reaching out to former members for honest feedback. You could do this if you still have their emails and they've offered to share feedback on why they left. So that's definitely an open door to ask them. A lot of times, sometimes it's time commitment. Sometimes they didn't agree with something in the chapter when they left. And so reaching out to them in this way, I think, is a great opportunity to help your chapter grow stronger. I would suggest maybe part of the process of having somebody resign is sending them, whether it's a questionnaire or just asking them while they're in the process of resigning and in their letter to include why they resigned. This could be a sit-down conversation with them, but having a record of why members resigned is always a great way to improve your chapter.
Yeah, similar to what Alex said, a lot of companies do what you call exit surveys or exit interviews. And you can do that, via Google Doc, a Google survey, something like that, or you can do it over the phone or through email. But maybe having something formal might help with that as well, so they can know it's anonymous and they can be completely honest on it.
Great answers. We're going to go on to our next question here, and that's, our chapter has a rather large pledge class. How do we engage everyone in everything and ensure that everyone understands all of the responsibilities and has an opportunity to learn?
I guess I can answer that. So my chapter is large as well. The chapter I came from was about 200 people. So one thing that really helped was having the e-board delegate down tasks. So, for instance, marketing had a marketing chair. The marketing chair had marketing directors. And then under that, we had just members who would come to our committee meetings just to pitch in their ideas, kind of like a revolving door where they could go to different ones. So kind of having your e-board delegate down some of those tasks so it takes some of the load off of them but keeps other people engaged and prepares in that officer transition too. So you kind of already have an eye on who's going to be the next e-board.
Great point. Alec or Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was a great answer. I would also say make sure, again, everybody in your pledge class has a role, whether that's being on a committee or doing anything. And if you guys do have requirements for your pledge class, this also gives them an opportunity to work with the brothers who are in sort of the equal role in the chapter. So work with and get advice from.
Great. This kind of touches a little bit on what you guys just said, but the next question we have is, we have a rather large chapter, and while we're able to continuously bring in large pledge classes, we have low retention because there isn't enough roles for everyone. What are some ways we can increase engagement and increase our retention?
I can answer that one. So one of the things that I did as a student member when I was in charge of the ACR, I was in charge of all of these different committees, and I came from a rather large chapter. How I handled the situation was giving individuals those roles, understanding the chapter's goals. So, for example, this goal would be increasing their retention and then making the different ideas of how you're going to go about that. Putting a committee for fun or just to do something to enjoy each other. Getting dual committee heads is another way to do it, to ensure that everyone has things that they're good at, has things that they enjoy. Understanding those and then putting an individual in a role that would let you almost exploit that, use their strengths to make the chapter itself better. Is always a great role. Having 5 roles within a chapter, you can build on that. Keep building and building. There are roles, even things that you haven't thought of already.
Great answer. Courtney, or your Courtney, Alec or Basha, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would suggest with what Courtney said about, creating those roles and exploiting and using people's strengths, also encourage them to use those examples on resumes and in interviews, because that's, ultimately the job or the goal after college is to find employment. So using what you learned in AK Psi on your resume and as examples is a great way to encourage people to say, this is real life, this is how I can apply it.
All right, thanks, Griff. Let's see, we got another question here, and it says, what should you do when a brother asks for an inactive status because they are swamped with academic work?
Hey guys, Alec again. This is actually a good question and a great learning opportunity. In this fraternity, we do not have inactive. That is not a status that we recognize. So right now we have leave of absences and suspensions that are short of this member resigning. We don't want any members to resign. I would suggest sort of seeing if it's academic work, if it's an internship, we have a leave of absence specifically for internships so that students can take advantage of those opportunities. Always work with the students. If they have a tough academic schedule, try to see if there is a way for them to still meet requirements that the chapter has and maybe not straight up the route that most people take. For example, if you have attendance requirements and this member can't be at meetings for any, like maybe they have work every night at that time, or they have a class at that time, you might consider sending them the minutes from that meeting, and they are required to send you back like 3 comments from the meeting minutes that they see. This way it keeps them engaged and they know when things are happening. Always be open with your members, make sure that they know those requirements as we discussed before, but also be open to discussing other avenues of meeting the chapter needs. Maybe they help out more on an event, or they spearheaded an event when they aren't able to be there as much as they need to be. Suspensions are sort of the status that are if they don't meet attendance requirements or they don't meet financial requirements. Again, always try to work with your brothers and see what more you can do before taking suspensions into account.
Great answer. Thank you for that clarification as well, Alec. All right, next question we have is, how do you handle when chapter officers are not exhibiting positive leadership?
I can answer that one. So I think a good idea would be to do almost like a mid-year evaluation of your e-board for the general members to fill out an anonymous survey expressing what they think the e-board is doing well and what they think they can improve on. A good method of doing this to keep it constructive is the stop, start, continue method. So that, can be a good way to do it in person. You might want to have the e-board step out of a meeting or do it at a retreat where maybe a chair of a committee might facilitate the discussion and then bring that information back to the e-board so that they can, dissect it and work on those flaws, but still capitalize on what they're doing well.
Great. Any other thoughts on that, either Courtney or Alec? All right, we're going to go on to the next question we have here. And that's, I've noticed I'm doing a lot of work for the chapter when it comes to recruitment and retention. How should I approach my chapter and get them to help me?
So I can actually answer that. It actually is kind of similar to my last answer. Again, bringing the goals of the chapter overall, bringing it to having this being a discussion at a chapter meeting, saying this is the work that I've done. what are we going to do as a chapter to ensure that that these ideas are being followed through, or even if these ideas are something that the chapter would like to pursue. Reiterating the fact that the recruitment is a chapter-wide process and necessity, having almost a, say it nicely, but having that reminder in a chapter setting is always a good thing.
Alec or Basha, anything else to add to that?
Great answer.
All right, it looks like we have, oh, sorry, Basha, you're jumping in there?
Oh, no, I was saying that was a great answer that Courtney gave.
All right. It looks like we do have one last question here, and that is just how can you increase retention?
I mean, it's different for every single chapter, but to improve retention in the pledge process, it's really knowing those requirements up front, like we talked about. That way they're not surprised by anything that's going on. Reducing member resignation or member apathy is a little bit more tailored to what the chapter is doing right now. Again, it's knowing what your chapter is expecting, and that may be a survey that you put out at the beginning of the year to start planning for the year, or you can do it if you have a lot of finance majors, maybe something that's of interest to them when you're doing your professional events. Something, just get to know your brothers and know what your chapter members would like, and also including pledges in chapter events can also help the pledges feel like they're part of the chapter already and get them a taste of what being a member would also be.
So one thing also about specifically increasing recruitment, several chapters have used having more than one pledge class within a semester. That way, individuals that can't be a part of that first pledge class still have the opportunity to join AKPsi, and that's later on in the semester. And that specifically is a great way to increase the recruitment for your chapter.
Great, thanks for that, Courtney. Looks like we did actually get one more question here before we wrap up. So it's going to be, how do you balance between upholding your chapter's requirements and keeping your members from burning out?
I think a good way to prevent burnout is to remind people why they joined in the first place. Maybe having like a slideshow. I know one thing that worked for our chapter is at our graduation ceremony, we'd flash pictures of brothers on a TV screen so they could see, like, you know, baby pictures all the way up into when they pledged to now being, you know, brothers that are going to become alumni. And so that's a good way to remind people, you know, to stay involved and that there is a point to it, and that's why they joined. Another thing is to include some fun events like retreats or social events that you can do after meetings. So it's not all about do this, do that, do this, do that. It's, you know, brotherhood incorporated into that. Don't forget about the brotherhood part.
I definitely have to agree with what Basha just said. Those are all great opportunities to do brotherhood and incorporate our fraternity values Another thing that you could do on a chapter basis to sort of make your meetings a little bit more interesting is you could do, my chapter always did a Brother of the Week. So somebody who did something really great for the chapter that week or had a really good professional interview or got a new job somewhere, got an internship, we'd make them Brother of the Week. And everybody would write like sort of what we call warm fuzzies on the board about them and congratulating them or saying how much they're appreciated. And that would really give people sort of the knowing that they were appreciated, whether it was for something that they did for the chapter or something that they personally felt, to know that they were recognized is a great way to combat the burnout. And I've seen brothers who are really burnt out, and just knowing that somebody saw them and saw their accomplishment really made a huge difference for them.
That's a great answer.
Just to add on to that as well. One thing that I really enjoy doing, and I've actually done it with a few chapters, when you ask someone the same question 6 times, each time you get to, by the time that you ask someone why that 6th time, you really get to the root cause. You really get to the true why. So if you ask someone, why are you here? And they'll give you an answer, and then you ask them again, why are you here? They'll give you another answer. Each time, by the time you get to that sixth why, they'll really be able to give you the true answer. And I've seen chapters almost use this as a method to, after you ask those questions 6 times, usually everyone has the same answer. It's, I'm here to be a brother. I'm here to make myself and this organization better. And it's fascinating to watch. But if you ask those 6 whys, you'll always be able to. It really builds up the chapter. I mean, sometimes I've been to chapters that have done this, and there's not a dry eye in the room. It really takes that apathy and throws it out that window. It really builds connections because everyone realizes that they're here to be better and do better. It's a really great exercise.
That's a great closing comment there, Courtney. All right, so with that, we are going to wrap up for the day. So I want to thank all of you guys that have called in today for your great questions and comments. For any follow-up questions or conversation, feel free to contact any of the panelists using the information that's provided on the screen. I do want to thank Alec, Basha, and Courtney again for their great insight and expertise today. Finally, we do have upcoming programs listed on the myakpsi.org website, including upcoming webinars and new e-learnings that are available for you guys to watch. Continue to check out the website and our social media as we add these new resources available to you. If you have any suggestions for future topics, please send them to education@akpsi.org. Again, thank you to our presenters, and thank you for joining us.